Hey everyone, if you haven't already checked out the first part to the Habib Akande interview about pleasure givers and takers, I'm going to encourage you to go back to last week and check out the bulk of this two-part interview. It's an amazing interview and I don't want you to miss the first part. But we're just going to jump right in to the last part of this interview, and thank you guys for listening. We've received some amazing feedback and I look forward to hearing more about this wonderful interview. And go follow Habib Akande on Instagram at Habib_Akande and check out his books, A Taste of Honey and Kunyaza. Do you see yourself leaning in the way of teaching women more about how to please men?
That is a very good question. No. The reason being because even though a majority of the readers of my books and the people that attend my workshops are women, I like to think that I'm speaking to men, even if I'm in a room full of women. The reason being, I think, just because in this day and age and with the climate and what it's in, I think a number of women might have a way of why is it a man is telling me as a woman. I think women naturally be quite defensive. So that's why what I generally would do is I'll have, for example, if I'm having a workshop, I might have a workshop with a woman, so we're on the same page. And I think maybe because I've noticed when I'm with a women are more inclined to listen to me more if I'm giving women advice when there's a woman that's acknowledging what I'm saying, if that makes sense. But if it's just a man standing by himself saying this is what, because women here, they've heard that enough of men telling women what to do. If it's on a one, if a woman, so that's what I'm just that's what I'm conscious of that, and just how it looks optically. Like you've got this man talking, telling women this is what you need to do in the bedroom. And I think a lot of women naturally would just be defensive of that. The same way I think a number of black people would actually be defensive if you heard a white person saying, black people, this is what you need to do to be better, whatever.
Really?
Just naturally. But in saying that, again, it's not that I'm averse to, I would say, maybe giving some women some tips, because I do that in the book, but I would try and make it balanced where they can see that I'm more speaking to men, but by speaking to men, I'm also speaking to women, if that makes sense.
That's so interesting, because you have like Cosmo and these magazines who do feature articles like how to make him go wild and, all that type of stuff. But I just find it really intriguing that women aren't more curious about how to be. I mean, so what you're saying is both parties aren't really very interested on how to be better lovers. They are both interested in how to be pleased.
I think men are. I think men are more interested to be better lovers, but it's
they have like porn. Women watch porn too, but men.
That's what I was going. I was going to say it's how men receive that information and education compared to women, where men are more inclined to listen or receive that information by way of pornography or informal conversations or even stuff like memes or like 2-minute clips, whereas a woman is more inclined to maybe, actually, I don't mind reading a book about this, having a discussion or conversation, whereas a man, we would learn, but we would learn by osmosis. So it depends on the environment that you're in. So even when I think about myself and I self-reflect me growing up, it wasn't that I was born this way. It's because I had older cousins and uncles that were like pleasers, but it was, if I'm honest, it was kind of like from an egotistical perspective that you want to be that guy. And then that's the mark of manhood. That's what a man is. So then you aspire to be like that because that's what I saw as how a man should behave. But then when I realized that a number of like my male friends or other men didn't have that, you could say, support system of what is to quote unquote be a selfless lover, then that's why they don't have the aspiration. And if the information that they're getting about sex is like through pornography, then of course they'll be misinformed. But in terms of actually having a conversation where, well, there was a workshop that you want to know how to be a better lover, if I'm honest, I probably wouldn't have. Obviously, I'm in my mid-30s now. When I was in my teens, early 20s, I wouldn't have gone to such a workshop.
Right.
Out of ego, out of pride, out of who's this person to tell me? Even if I, like a lot of men have insecurities when it comes to premature ejaculation, when it comes to erectile dysfunction, but to go to somewhere where you can open up, a lot of men don't want to do that, especially in front of a number of men and women kind of thing. So you'll try and find the answers secretly, like on the internet, but a lot of the information on the internet is not necessarily like accurate. That's a problem. So it's not that I would say that men aren't interested in becoming better lovers, but it's that we're getting the sources that we go to is not generally giving us correct information. It's coming from entertainment sources. Whereas with a lot of women, I think a lot of women are interested in the topic, but it's kind of like, I want to know about other people. So a woman can read a book or books about why men aren't performing well in the bedroom, or why some women have issues, but instead of to self-reflect and think about themselves, and I think, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar in dating as well, that a lot of women might be looking at, why aren't there any good men? Why aren't there enough men for me to date? But they might not be looking at themselves and thinking, actually, let me self-reflect. Am I a good person? Am I a good, right? Am I that person?
Am I prepared?
Am I looking, exactly? And that's something that it's a difficult process to do. It's easy to kind of complain about the other side.
Right.
Like, men aren't good at in the bedroom. Men aren't good at dating. There's no man that's going to give me everything that I want, rather than looking at it like, I don't want to say deserve, but am I the stuff
am
that
I
I'm
in a
asking,
good space? Like, that's exactly what I work with when I work with women with coaching, is helping them to get in the right mental and emotional space to be, so that you are who you need to be, you know. And if you're in that space, you're going to attract better partners, but you're going to take different actions that are going to lead to different results. But if you're not mentally and emotionally in that right space, then you're going to keep it being in the same place that you're complaining about right now. What I wanted to ask you about was, when you say that, I like the point about men learning through osmosis and women, you know, learn more intellectually, I guess, or they're more curious about how to get themselves pleased. I feel like with men, you mentioned pride being something that keeps them from learning, and I feel like how to be a better pleaser. And I feel like with women, it's more shame stops them from being a better pleaser. And I think about, like, you know, growing up, just hearing my older cousins talk, or if I'm at work, like I had like jobs as a teenager and stuff like that, and hearing like the women who are maybe in their 20s or 30s talk about their relationships, or like, I can still remember when I was about 16 or 17, I worked in a nursing home, and the kitchen in a nursing home is like putting the meals together, serving in a dining room and stuff like that in a nursing home. And there's this one cook, she was probably in her 20s. And I remember one day, I can still remember, I can picture it perfectly. And she's telling us, like, yeah, and this is how you got to please your man, and you need to use a halls on him. We're like, a halls? What's the halls? What you mean, oh, girl, you don't know about halls? First of all, make him take a tablespoon of peanut butter about a half hour or so before y'all, you know, are intimate, so that his stamina his energy is up. So get him a boost of energy. Make him take a tablespoon of peanut butter, and then you need to use a halls on them. And we're like asking all these questions. We're like 16, 17, just like curious, and but she was just sharing this because for some of the women that I was around, the family members or older people in the neighborhood, the women also took a lot of pride in being pleasers. So it's interesting because you said that those were your influences. So that's what's normal to you. And that's why I'm so baffled that a lot of women have a hard time with being pleasers, because the women that I was raised around and what I would hear, just like at work or at school or in my neighborhood or family, the women took pride in being pleasers. So I would say little things around the house, or if I was babysitting my little cousins, I would hear my older cousins talk about, yeah, well, you know, you just need to do this, or, you know, these little things. So to me, that seemed normal. But it's interesting because if it's not something that people around you are talking about or women take pride in, then of course you're going to find some shame in it.
Yeah.
That's really
100%. I agree. I like, because that shame just making me think a lot. Like when you mentioned that, obviously, like with a lot of men, ego might help them become better lovers, whereas shame is preventing women from becoming. I'm just digesting that. That is so true. Yeah, that's very true. And that needs to be unpacked. But I think even that, it's like, I imagine obviously even the work that you're doing, it involves the coach that you're doing with people, a lot of self-reflection for them to look at themselves, their inner states, and why they've behaved the way they do. But that's not easy. but you need generally someone, unless you're naturally a reflective person, you need maybe someone to help you kind of gauge through those, how you've come to these conclusions and you think the way you are. Whereas if you haven't got that person to kind of help you guide through why you think the way you do, I can understand why people are in a bit of a rut where they think the way they do, but they don't understand why they think the way they do, and they're not trying to change it because for them that's just the norm.
It's the norm. Absolutely. And well, shame and guilt really holds us back from a lot of things. And like you said, you can be I'm a super self-reflective person, but I have to push myself in different ways. I have so many people that are close to me that I have really intimate relationships with, whether they're counselors formally or if they just act as a counselor to me. Like, I have really vulnerable relationships with everyone that I'm really close to. I talk to them about anything and everything. So I'm a firm believer that you need people to see your blind spots. You can't see your own blind spots. So when it comes to relationships, whether it's dating or sexual or anything else like that, you often need someone else to be your soundboard. You need someone else to see your blind spots. And what I find is that when you help someone to see their blind spots, that's when the light bulb goes off, because like you said, things become normal. If you have any type of understanding of like basic neuroscience, the way our brains work, once we create a habit or a pattern, whether it's a behavioral pattern or a thinking pattern, but this pattern, it just subconsciously dictates our actions. So it does become normal. It just becomes this world that we're operating in without even thinking about it. So you have to break that pattern and change that thought process or that behavioral process, and then you can actually do something different. But when it comes to whether it's, like I said, relationships or dating or even sexuality, once this pattern is in play, until it's interrupted, you're going to keep going to that default. You're just running on autopilot. That's just the way our brains work. So I incorporate a lot of neuroscience techniques on rewiring how people view themselves or view relationships, and really looking at deep within, like, where did the root of this come from, so that you can turn it around. But if you don't even know why you're doing certain things or why you think a certain way and you're just running on autopilot, it's really hard to do something different. Like, you can read all the books and watch all the videos and have all the information, but you still don't understand how to turn it around. So I actually think it might be, with Kunyaza, actually, you're really helping people to understand how to turn it around, how to break their pattern when it comes to intimacy and getting pleasure. But I would just love to see more women desiring to be a pleaser, because I feel like you can't fully get pleasured when it comes to, like, your sexual exchange in the bedroom. I feel like you have to get to a point of desiring to be a pleaser, because then you're going to take the orgasm instead of waiting for it, right? Like, you're going to go ahead and go for it. And even if you are waiting for your partner to be a better lover, if you're not good at communication or vulnerability, you're going to know everything he's supposed to do and still have a hard time communicating it.
And how do you, I'm just wondering, how do you get, especially with the men that you work with, how do you get men who are naturally not introspective to start to allow someone like yourself for them to open up and be more vulnerable? Now, are there any, how does that work, the process?
So for the men that come to me, I would say, for the most part, they're kind of at a place of, I think when most people come to me, they're kind of at a breaking point. Like, look, something has to be done. So I think that my typical clients have a level of introspection, and they just are ready to, they just need to go deeper. So I don't typically deal with people that are completely, they're just not self-aware. There's a level of self-awareness, like, okay, I need to improve. Honestly, most of my clients are kind of into personal development. They're readers. Like, they have a lot of these common traits about them that they're already kind of exploring how to be better. They understand that they need to be better in life, like just in the game of life. So they have that basic level of understanding. If someone's just completely naive, they're not going to work with me because they don't think anything's wrong. They're always looking outside. So the people that I typically work with, there is a level of introspection there. They're curious. Like, there's a level of curiosity there about themselves. So then they come to me, it's like, okay, let's just go a little bit deeper. But they understand that there's something that has to be changed. Like, they're at that point in their life where they understand, okay, something needs to be done different. With the men, I would say, especially with the men that I work with coaching, not just with matchmaking, but with coaching specifically, I would say that the men are often, a lot of times they're a little bit younger. A lot of my male clients are like under 40 for sure. I do have some that are older, but the ones who really do the coaching aspect, I would say they're under 40, probably even under 35. So their habits aren't as deeply set in, because I feel like with men, especially once they're over age 35, habits are really deeply set in. They kind of just are who they are, unless they are at a place where they really want to change. With women too, but I think women are just a little bit more open to change. But with the men, I would say there's also a lot of times a inner struggle with self-worth and self-confidence as well, but there might be a little internal struggle with self-worth. They wouldn't ever openly display that, and they might not even see it as a self-worth issue. They might not see it as a self-worth issue. I'll know just by talking to them that it's a self-worth issue, that they doubt themselves a lot, they question themselves a lot. And I think that they're able to open that up to me, because I really try my best to create a judgment-free zone with my clients and allow them to, like, even like my Muslim clients, they might hold a lot of shame and guilt around their sexuality, or that they have been sexual outside of marriage, or, you know, maybe they've never been married, but they've, you know, been through different, like, I'm just like, listen, I don't care. Like, I honestly don't care. I'm not judging you. Or if they're telling me something that occurred during the courtship or during the time of getting to know someone, and I'm listening really closely to the story, and I'm just like, listen, did you guys have sex? Like, just be honest. It's okay. Like, I can tell by the things that you're saying, you guys, okay. That being said, this is what I think you need to do differently. You know, so I create a safe space for people where they feel like they can open up judgment free. But I feel like with the men, oftentimes there's an internal struggle of self-worth that they're not fully honest about on the surface, but they just know that they just need a little bit of help in some areas.
Would you say, in terms of relationships, and especially at the whole introspective point, would you say there's more work to be done with men or women from your experience? I can tell to get to that point.
That's such an interesting question, and I've been asked this before. This is what I'll say. I'm not going to say that there's more work to be done with women than men. I think that both parties have to be introspective, but I will say this. I am a firm believer that the standards are set by the women, and that the level of society is based upon the level of its women. And when you get the women to get into a place of high self-worth and clarity of what they should expect, and raising their expectations, not just for men, but their expectations for themselves. Because usually what I see is women are always blaming, right, outward, like men need to do better, there's no good men this, men that. But when you really pull back the layers, their real expectations, not the he has to have a job, he has to have a degree, and all these other material things, are really surface layer. But when you pull back and see how they actually engage with men, where their expectations are, as I mentioned earlier, their ability to assert their needs, or assert their voice, or expect to be seen, or expect to be heard, or expect their feelings to be validated, that's usually very low. So they're low. They have really low expectations behind closed doors. And these are women that can have PhDs. You know, they're attorneys. They have these accolades that you would think that they would have high expectations, but it's not really high standards when it comes to relationships. It's just they want a man who has these material things or has these different accolades. But when it comes to how they actually engage with the opposite sex, their self-worth is really low. They actually don't really expect to be valued. They don't really expect to be respected, or they might expect it, but they don't feel honored or respected in their relationships. And they don't really understand how to get to a place of expecting that, so that they're able to walk away if they're not being validated, or to understand that their voice deserves to be heard, their needs deserve to be met. And that's usually where women, no matter what they've accomplished in life, they struggle with that.
And that where you mentioned about like there's a number of women who don't feel that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Is that from society? Is that from religion, culture? What would you? Was it from their peers
You know, I
themselves?
find it across faiths, across cultures. There's definitely a mindset with women of not being good enough. I think that's the common mindset. Most women just don't feel like they're enough. They don't feel good enough. I mean, even when I look at the major conflict when it comes to polygyny in the Muslim community, it's not just because that man wants to have another wife. Usually, it's this feeling of why aren't I enough, right?
Yeah.
So all women want to do is feel like they are enough, and helping people to understand that another person, and I actually have to explain this to my male clients as well, that another person's actions, beliefs, you know, things that they do or won't do really has nothing to do with you. Like it's
100%.
less about you than you think it is. It's really
Mm-hmm.
about them and often self-preservation. But
Yeah.
women typically take it so personally that they see it as an extension of themselves and just feel like, why aren't I enough? So even when it comes to rejection or not meeting the right one, they take it so deeply and they just feel like, how come I'm not getting chosen? How come I'm not enough? And you have to be able to break away from that mindset and not see that as an extension of you. And it is society. It's the idea that, you know, women aren't enough unless they have children, unless they're married,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's just all these superwoman aspects that she has to be the best looking, she has to be smart, she has to be submissive, she has to be all these things in one. You know, even when it comes to sexuality, she has to be all these things in one. And if she's not enough. And if he doesn't want her, or if a man wants someone else, it's because she's not enough. No, maybe he just likes oranges. Maybe he just likes, you know, it has nothing to do with you. But women deeply internalize that every single thing a man does is a reflection of her and her self-worth.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm just thinking, you know, I do agree, and it's something which, so even with like the whole kunyaza, when people ask me what it's about, and you know, obviously it's a African technique that has a reputation of facilitating female ejaculation and multiple orgasms in women, and I said it has a reputation of that. Now, some women, when I've had you know, whether it's online or I'm having workshops, and I try to stress that achieving, whether it's female ejaculation or an orgasm, that's a goal, but it's not the goal. The goal is mutual pleasure.
Right.
And the reason why I try to emphasize that is because there are some women who look at like, if I don't achieve this, then is it that I'm not enough, or am I broken, or there's something wrong with me? And I'm just trying to explain that no, it's not that you have to achieve this, but we're exploring this culture and this tradition and why some women are able to experience these different levels of pleasure. But it's not that if I don't achieve it, then my husband is going to go and find someone who can achieve it. Someone actually sent me a really long email saying that, okay, I really like what you're doing with the book, but I think you're going to make some women feel very insecure because if they don't squirt with their husband when they're doing kunyaza, then the man's going to go to another woman who can squirt with kunyaza. And I was like, whoa, where did you get that from? I didn't.
Right, like
Yeah, I was like, where did you get that from? I was like, whoa. So that's why now I'm trying to make sure it's quite clear, because when people, you know, when you see the articles about kunyaza, things like that, it's always this very like, oh, you do this and the woman will get multiple orgasms, or she will squirt, she'll do. So it's very goal orientated, and that's what I think generally people are, you know, attracted to. But then it's not just about that. So that's why even when I have the workshop, I try to break it down that it's about mutual pleasure. That's not the goal. It's a goal that might happen, but ultimately it's about pleasure for the man and for the woman. And because it's an act which is a non-penetrative act, it allows the benefit for the man is that it helps him be more sexually disciplined. He's not just thinking about penetration. He's concentrating on the clitoral stimulation, which again, which you mentioned earlier, is what a lot of women need to experience an orgasm. So it's something where a man can explore his female partner's body, and hopefully a woman can also feel that she's going to reach a level of satisfaction that she may not have received just by penetration. And then obviously after doing kunyaza, then you can engage in penetrative intercourse. But I've noticed that, yeah, sometimes if I don't mention that it's not just about like squirting and multiple orgasms, and some people feel, okay, if I don't experience that, then is there something wrong with me, or is my partner going to go to find someone that can get this? And it's like a tick box exercise. And I'm saying it's not about that, but it's quite sad that a number of women have this like.
Well, it goes right back to what you mentioned earlier about women feeling deserving of pleasure in the bedroom. You know, that's all a self-worth issue. So we would be surprised how much self-worth dictates so much of our life, whether it's relationships, sexuality, career, right? Like the house that we're in, the car that we drive, like all of this is a reflection of our self-worth. Do we feel worthy of certain things? You know, and the things that we shy away from are the things that when we don't feel worthy of it, we really shrink ourselves and avoid it, or we feel really self-conscious and insecure around it. So, you know, if a woman doesn't feel worthy to be pleased in a bedroom, or she doesn't feel like she's good enough when it comes to either a man's desires, like maybe she doesn't really feel very desirable, she doesn't feel like a man really looks at her that way. You know, like you look at Aisha Curry, and she's a beautiful woman, but saying that she doesn't really feel desired like that because other men aren't seeking her out or other men aren't approaching her. You know, that's a self-worth issue. Like, why is that a reflection of how you feel about yourself as a married woman, especially? You know, I understand some women would like, well, she has the right, and, you know, stuff gets attention, everything, but you have to be in a place of self-worth within yourself where you don't need so much outside validation. When you're in a place of needing a lot of outside validation, you're giving a lot of power away to other people. You know, you're allowing other people to determine what your worth is. And this is why I'm so against so many relationship coaches and a lot of these relationship experts, especially male relationship experts, who
I was going to ask you, I want you to expand on that.
Yeah, I have a problem with a lot of them because I feel like, honestly, I feel like a lot of male relationship experts talk to women, especially Black women, like a lot of pastors do, where it's a lot of emotional moving. Like, let me just say things that get you moved emotionally, but they're not really going deeper to really teach them anything. They're not really helping them with accountability, introspection, anything like that. Like, they're just saying things to a man should do this, or a man should, but it's not really anything deeper, right? And a lot of them will shout to women, know your worth, know your worth, know your worth, you know, value yourself, know your worth. But it's like, it's just not that simple. And if no one has ever taught you what it actually means to know your worth, how to feel worthy, how to step into that, then it's just words. It's not going to do anything for you. So part of what I do when I'm working with women is helping them to understand how to get into a place of knowing your worth. Because once you understand that, you can always step back into it when you're feeling low value, when you're feeling unworthy. But if you don't even understand how to get into that place internally, then someone telling you know your worth, value yourself, that really means nothing. And you're going to look at really shallow things as a way to validate your worth, like your degree or your car or your body even. You're going to place your worth on that because that's as far as it goes for you. You don't really understand what it actually means because you don't really know what your value is from the inside. So it's really important to help women get to their place of feeling worthy of what they desire. Men too. That was good.
A lot of food for thought there. I like that.
I want to wrap up. We've been on this for so long, and I appreciate you so much. This was excellent. This was so good. And I definitely want to do another podcast with you. I want to have you back because I want to talk about more about that. I think this is a really good subject, especially for my audience, to understand the pleasure gap. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Oh, yeah, so you can find me on social media, so like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Habib Akande, spelled HABEEBAKANDE, and you can find my books on Amazon, Kunyaza, and A Taste of Honey. Before I go, I just want to say thank you, Jazakallah Khairan, Zara, for inviting me. I've been a fan of your work from afar for the last few years since we connected online. Please keep up the good work. Know that your work is appreciated, and I think it's important that even as men, where we're seeing people, especially women, that's doing work that is pioneering and important that we kind of actually not only tell the person on the one-to-one, but also in public. So just, yeah, I'm not that you need my support or anything, but I just want to know that your work is acknowledged and appreciated.
Support. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So just wanted to make sure I say that openly, because I've told you that before, but yeah, just please keep up the good work, and may Allah bless you with your endeavors, because it's much appreciated, seriously.
Thank you. I'm going to wrap that up, you guys. So I do want to say thank you again so much. You've been amazing. This was a lot longer than I anticipated, so you definitely have had a long and powerful conversation with me today. So I appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation. I definitely support everything that you're doing. You're amazing. And I see you, and I was like, wow, about your workshop that you had. You had so many people come out about like a week ago, right?
Yeah, last Friday.
That was amazing. We had an amazing crowd come out. That's exciting to me. So we're definitely going to continue to connect, and hopefully, inshallah, I'll be able to have you back for another interview. So thank you.